Eagles Entertainment.
With the 15th pick in the NFL Draft, the Philadelphia Eagles select.
You're listening to the Journey to the Draft podcast.
Welcome to the Journey to the Draft podcast, presented by LifeBrand. I'm your host, Fran Duffy, and it is finally here. We are on the precipice of the 2022 NFL Draft. T-minus 5 days until draft night here as we're recording this early on Monday morning. And I think when you look at this class, we're going to be all talked about the defensive line, especially at the top. And so what better way to bring us into draft week than breaking down these defensive linemen? Here to do that for Draft Buzz, Dane Brugler, Ben Fennell. We're talking interior and edge rushers here for this discussion. Can't wait to dig into these players with Ben and Dane. We'll wrap things up with our draft mailbag. A couple of really good questions that we're able to sneak in just before the draft. We're not going to do any for the episode that drops on Wednesday morning because that'll be the mock draft extravaganza. It is back for like the 8th year in a row. I should probably look that up and see exactly how many years we've been doing this podcast for the mock draft extravaganza. But I've talked with beat writers, national analysts, people that are focused in on specific teams from all around the country for these 32 picks here in round one. And I'm going to break it all down with Greg Cosell and Ben Fennell. That'll be the episode that drops on Wednesday morning. Here, you could chew on the defensive line with myself, Ben, and Dane. Now, a little bit of housekeeping before we get there. Number one, you want to make sure you're tuned in to Eagles Draft Central. Myself, Ross Tucker, Gabrielle DiGiovanni, Dave Spadaro, he's going to be on the scene in Las Vegas for night one. He's going to be up outside the Eagles draft room for day 2 and day 3. Exclusive interviews, exclusive analysis. So if you're an Eagles fan, make sure you are tuned in to Eagles Draft Central. Myself, Ross, Ella, Dave, you do not want to miss it. Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We're going to have pre-shows leading up to each draft and then also reactions to each pick in round 1 and reactions at the end of each round. So rounds 2 through 7, we will be breaking down every single pick the Eagles make on draft weekend. No better place to do that than on Eagles Draft Central. Obviously, we'll still be churning out podcasts here on the Journey to the Draft podcast. We're going to have episodes with Dane, Ben, and myself breaking down all of the selections that the Eagles make throughout the course of the weekend and some looks around the league as well over the course of draft weekend. We'll do a full recap when we get to next week here on the show. And like I mentioned, we've got the mock draft extravaganza episode that drops Wednesday morning. You do not want to miss that. There's going to be chock full of information, especially if you're trying to make that final mock draft, trying to get a sense of how round 1 is going to pan out. Do not miss that discussion and that podcast that will drop about 48 hours from the time that I am recording this podcast. That said, let's head on over to Draft Buzz. Excited to break down these defensive linemen with Ben and Dane. It's time now for Draft Buzz.
Now it's time for Draft Buzz.
All right, well, for our final position preview for the 2022 NFL Draft, let's welcome in Dane Brugler and Ben Fennell. And guys, for months, almost like full calendar year, we have been talking about how excited we have been for this defensive line group. And obviously, a lot of that is set on these pass rushers off the edge, but certainly some really intriguing interior alignment as well. And so the three of us are going to talk through this entire defensive line group, the different categories that we're going to focus on, both off the edge and with the interior guys. We'll start with the former. Let's talk through explosive edge rushers. Ben, you're going to have the day 1 guys. Dane, you're going to pick up day 2. I will wrap things up with day 3. Let's talk through the most explosive pass rusher. Who presents the most lethal first step to win off the ball against an offensive tackle? Ben, we'll go with you on day 1.
Well, I really feel like that's how Kayvon Thibodeau makes a lot of his money in rushing the passer. And that's timing the snap, getting off the ball, having a lethal first step, immediately threatening tackles vertically. And then it really opens up his entire pass rush arsenal to come back inside with spin moves or inside rip moves or to clear the corner with high side rushes with the burst, the bend, the timing, the flexibility. Kayvon Thibodeau, I think his first step off the ball really opens up his whole kind of pass rush plan and attacking the passer. So getting off the ball, that first step. There's some other guys out there that maybe it's comparable, maybe a healthy David Ajabo is up there with the first step. Ebikete's got a great first step. Nick Benito's got a good first step. But Kayvon Thibodeau, this is why we're talking about him in the top 10 for, conceivably 2 full years right now as being a top 10 prospect because of that lethal first step.
And I think the big thing, too, is that he was not always, over the course of his career, not just speaking to this year, because that was that new defensive scheme with Tim DeRuyter, but over the course of his career was not always asked that, hey, I'm just going to fly upfield and, win with that first step quickness. So important to note there with Kayvon Thibodeau.
I love that he started working in some of those long arms, too.
Yes.
Because you
that's
start
game,
You threaten outside,
Yep.
you get the tackles, open their hips up to the sideline, stab that long arm on the inside shoulder like he did against UCLA a couple times, walk the tackle back. But it all starts because of the vertical threat, the first step threat. Then everything else just seems easy.
Ben, you and I have seen that firsthand with Josh Sweat and his early development over the course of his career. You can literally go through and watch all of his rushes from his rookie year on and just watch that plan continue to develop. And early, and even going back to Florida State, so much of it was first step. And then you see, hey, like, I've got these tools. I've got this length. Let me use that to my advantage. Now he starts working in the long arm. And then you get to year 3, year 4, and he's working off compliments off that, right? So Thibodeau's first step, and then also his ability to win with that length, show off some of that power. That's going to be huge for him moving to the NFL. Dane, how about you? Day 2.
Yeah, on day 2, Nick Bonito, Oklahoma, got to be the guy you think of when you're talking first step quickness. According to PFF, nobody had a better pass rush win rate last season than Bonito. And really, it's because of that initial burst, the fluidity where you can capture the corner. Are there questions about, how he's going to hold up versus the run? Sure. But there's no questions about how quick he can attack the pocket, whether, mostly as that wide 9 guy. And the testing backed it up. He had a 1.53 10-yard split. That's better than any of the pass rushers that are going to go in the first round. So if you're looking for a guy that can win with that first step quickness, Nick Bonito's your guy.
I love it. For me, I'm going to go with Amare Barno from Virginia Tech. And obviously, look, this is a guy that blew up the combine. He had a great workout out in Indianapolis. But even just going back to film study, Amare Barno at Virginia Tech, I remember when he got the Senior Bowl acceptance, I said, okay, let me really dig in and watch this guy because it was the first time I had done it. And the first thing that stands out is his explosiveness off the ball, his ability. When he's wired into the snap count, there are not a lot of guys that can threaten the corner like Barno can in this class. This is a converted linebacker. He was a no-star recruit coming out of high school. He goes to junior college, ends up at Virginia Tech, again, as a linebacker, then makes the move to as a defensive end in 2020. So I think when you look at Barno, his athletic traits, his explosiveness, his first step, that's where he's going to win early on. But it's kind of like Thibodeau where he's got that length too. I mean, he's got 34-inch arms. He's got that ability to go speed to power. He just doesn't know always how to time that up because so much of that can be timing as well, coming off the ball and setting up your rush. So for me, Amare Barno, day 3, a guy to keep an eye on there when you're talking about those speed rushers off the edge. Now let's get into the hand usage element of this, the craftiest edge rusher. Who has the most developed pass rush plan and advanced hand usage? Ben, we'll come to you for day 1.
I'm going to go with Jermaine Johnson here out of Florida State, the ACC Defensive Player of the Year, coming over from Georgia via Independence Community College, via Eden Prairie, Minnesota. Just his combination of power, speed, pass rush plans, counter moves, his combination of using his hands while also gaining ground within the pass rush can beat you with that 3-way go, outside, inside, right through you, like he did in that highlight Senior Bowl practice, putting big Darian Kennard right on his butt with speed to power. Jermaine Johnson has so many different ways to beat you. And even if those ways get stymied within the rush, immediately has the counter moves off of it, knows how to stay active, keep himself free. I think Jermaine Johnson is a top 10 prospect in this draft all day long. And I would not be surprised to see him maybe squeeze into the top 5. I think Jermaine Johnson is on a meteoric rise with his stock, his trajectory. He checks every box, in my opinion.
It's fascinating with him because there is plenty of buzz about him going that high in the draft. And then you see, like, even in Peter King's mock draft, him falling all the way to the Arizona Cardinals in the early 20s, right? So the variance with Jermaine Johnson, I find to be really fascinating, a really, really interesting story, and obviously a really talented player. Dane, for you, day 2, who's the guy that stands out with his craftiness off the edge?
I think I'm going to go with Kingsley Enagbare here, South Carolina. He's kind of the exact opposite of Nick Bonito in terms of size, in terms of, more being that power rusher, only average get off, but that length and the fact that he just understands what he's doing with his rush attack. He's very strategic in how he attacks blockers. He can patch together those rush moves. He uses proper angling so he can out leverage. And I really appreciate how he can catch and discard the wrists of blockers. It's something that really stands out with him. So he's a thinking rusher. And yes, there's a lot of power to his game. He loves to introduce his length, but more so than with that burst. It's something that the mental part of how he gets after the quarterback, how he disrupts the pocket, that's a big part of how he wins as a rusher.
For me, I'm going to go day 3. Jeffrey Gunter from Coastal Carolina, who's got a little bit of an interesting backstory. Started his career at Coastal, then transferred up to NC State for 1 year, didn't play, and ended up going back to rejoin the Chanticleers. And this is a guy that's been 3-time first-team All-Sun Belt, was the Defensive Player of the Year for his team back as a sophomore in 2018. And when you watch him, to me, like what the number one thing was, look, he's not like super, super explosive. He's more of a power rusher than a speed rusher. But the flashes of him with his hands at the top of the rush were really, really good. A really slick stab, slap, rip move where you're going to fake that long arm, then slap the tackle's hands away and then rip through contact. Really violent chop move. He's got a really nice Superman cross chop as well. I'd like to see him string moves together a little bit more consistently. But this is a guy who's never behind the quarterback. Ben, you and I talk about that so often with how important that is for pass rushers. You can't sack the quarterback when you're 3 yards behind him in the backfield. He's never behind the quarterback. And he's pretty good on stunts and twists too. And that's more about savvy and timing as well, not just about athleticism and power. So for me, Jeffrey Gunter from Coastal Carolina, he was a guy that stood out to me in this category. Let's go now to the next one here. Best power rusher. Who's the biggest threat to push the pocket off the edge? Ben, we'll come to you.
Well, this has got to be Aiden Hutchinson out of Michigan. I think his wound up style, that real compact power, his ability to kind of go right through you as he did against Ohio State, but he loves to rip through a half man, can power through shoulders on the inside or the outside half, tackles. He's a really strong player with strong hands, just doesn't have that length profile. But with the way he really kind of builds up his power into contact of the tackles is how he wins, by staying active and playing with good leverage, active hands, rarely ever gets stuck into the rush. And without that length and without that real true flexibility and bend, that's how he's going to win. And that's okay. There's plenty of power rushers, plenty of 3-down players that maybe don't have that elite first step or that elite length that are just well-rounded football players. And I think that's going to be Aiden Hutchinson's profile once he gets to the NFL. Maybe that's like a Bradley Chubb type, who we may say, oh, he's not flying off the edge off anyone, or is going to be a consistent 15-sack guy. That's a 3-down player that plays the run well, good power rusher, disciplined player, and plays with his hair on fire. So Aiden Hutchinson, I think he's going to be a really well-rounded football player.
Any questions about his power, just go check out Dane. I got to think that was one of the more viral clips that you posted from the college football season, was Hutchinson's bull rush against Ohio State. It was one of the bigger plays from the college football calendar. Dane, how about you? Day 2 power rusher.
So, I mean, I could also say Enigbare here, but just to mix it up a little bit, I'm going to go Sam Williams. And I don't know that you necessarily think power with him because it's that initial quickness, but I think it's that speed to power, that length that he uses where he's a hard charger. And so he can, create a little bit of that surge with that quickness. And he is not afraid to go right at blockers, create that knockback, violent hands. He's got those stab moves. So I don't think he's maybe traditional in terms of what we categorized as a power blocker, but because of that first step, because he's a little linear, he is not afraid to go through blockers. And I mean, the guy's 260, he's not a small guy. But I think that that quickness off the edge, an ability to really attack blockers right in their face, that's where we see some of that power come through.
For me, I'm going to go to, for day 3, Alex Wright from UAB, 6'5", 270 pounds. Didn't test quite to the level that we expected. I know the three of us talked about him before the combine this spring. Didn't quite match those numbers, but I think when you look at his size, his length, and then look, he's got a little bit of an underdeveloped pass rush plan. I think at the end of the day, that's why we're talking about him more on early day 3 as opposed to like the middle of day 2. But I think when you look at Wright, the way he sets up his long arms and his bull rushes with stutter steps and Euro steps to just kind of get the tackle to freeze for 1 sec before getting into his chest. And then with that frame, the ability to push the pocket really, really stands out. So I'll go Alex Wright here. That wouldn't shock me if he ended up on day 2, but I'll cheat a little bit here, have him here for day 3. Let's talk against the run now, guys. And obviously that's the ability to be able to stick on the field for all 3 downs. Who stops the run the best from day 1, Ben?
Well, I got to pick somebody out of this legendary Georgia front 7. It's got to be Trayvon Walker. And I think his ability to stop the run at multiple positions in a dominant fashion is why he's a proverbial number 1 overall pick, proverbial top 5 pick here, in combination with his explosive testing and upside and trajectory as a prospect. But his ability to stop the run, whether it's at a 5 tech, a stand up wide 9, playing 4-eye inside. You want him head up against the guard at a 2. He could do that as well. Technically sound. All these Georgia run defenders are playing the run first with proper technique, leverage, hand placement, eye leverage. They do a great job all at the point of attack. They're very much like that Alabama kind of style where they have to play the run first, all technically sound. And then let's see if anyone's got some pass rush juice at the next level, a la Jaron Reed type. So Trayvon Walker, everybody wants to know what's his pass rush upside. Don't worry about that. He's a 3-down player because he stops the run and does it dominant and does it at a variety of spots.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that you could make the argument that he's one of the better pure run defenders in this class, regardless of position.
And Fran, real quick, I had the thought this morning. I was just reflecting on like Ndamukong Suh's career. Now, he was a freak show at Nebraska. Yep. He impacted the game on a down-to-down basis. But Ndamukong Suh just played 11, 12 years. Rarely ever came off the field. Yep. Is he a sack specialist, a sack artist? No. But he's one of the most respected and dominant trench players in the NFL because he's a 3-down player, plays up and down the line, plays with his hair on fire, strong, just like Calais Campbell going into his 13th year or whatever with the Ravens. Same thing. Not a sack artist, but a guy that doesn't come off the field, takes care of his body. That's going to be Trayvon Walker. Maybe not the sexiest as far as production and on your fantasy teams. These are going to be dominant, strong football players. Don't look at the sack totals every year to figure out are they Hall of Famers or not. These are guys that play football every down.
Love it. That's a great point to wrap it up on Trayvon Walker. Dane, how about you on day 2?
Got to go Josh Paschal here from Kentucky. Yep. Smart, technically sound. He sets a hard edge. Is he the most sophisticated pass rusher? No, but you know what you're getting with this guy in the run. I mean, he is very detailed at the point of attack, sees through blocks, understands what the offense is trying to do by the way he could read the scheme. So his point of attack instincts are really, really impressive.
Dane, do you like him better inside or outside? Obviously, you're talking about with the edge group. I'm going to assume the latter.
Yeah, no, I do. I mean, could he add some weight and move inside? Sure. But I mean, he was 268 at the combine. I think at this point he's a base end and, kick him inside on passing downs, go to a NASCAR package, that type of thing. But for right now, I think he's definitely more of an end than an inside player.
There are a lot of people that are big fans of Josh Paschal around the league. So just a name to keep an eye on here as we get closer and closer to draft weekend. For me, I'm going to stay in the SEC. I'm going to go with Michael Clemens from Texas A&M. 6th-year senior. He's a little bit older. He's had some off-field stuff, Dane, that you've written about in the Beast. You get there's some medical things that you got to work through, but 6'5", nearly 35-inch arms. This is a guy that's played plenty of football. And really where he stands out is the ability to be a 3-down defender. I think that he still has some things to clean up as a pass rusher, but he's a good run defender, has that ability to hold up at the point of attack from a strength standpoint. He leads with his hands. He locks out. He sets a firm edge. I think you look at Clemens on day 3 as one of the better pure run players in this class. Now, let's talk through effort. Who's the high motor guy? Who plays with the best effort on film? This is one of the funner categories to kind of debate in your mind. Ben, who'd you like here day 1?
Well, I'm going to go Boye Mafe out of Minnesota, who I really feel like that's kind of how he gets his production, by just playing hard. Go back and watch his high school highlights as well. They said hike, and he just chased the ball. And you really kind of see that with now his testing metrics. And he's a little stiff in the lower half. He doesn't have the best flexibility, the best ankle bend, but he wins because he plays so hard. He's explosive. You saw that 40 time at that height, weight, speed. Go look at the history of the combine, all sorts of who's who of NFL Hall of Famers and pass rush specialists. But Boye Mafe, who plays with the best effort, most intensity, whistle to whistle, echo of the whistle. Give me Boye Mafe.
Love it. Dane, how about you? Day 2.
First name that came to mind, Arnold Ebiketie from Penn State. I think this is a player who, maybe it sounds hyperbolic, but in the last, say, 5 years, no defensive end that I've watched has made more plays at the sideline or away from his, where he started than Arnold Ebiketie. Wow. This guy's motor does not quit. He's got those long strides, so he has speed. No one tells him that, hey, you shouldn't be making this type of play 40 yards down the field. He just doesn't quit. The motor continues to rev throughout the play. He's just a lot of fun to watch. Go get the football. That's kind of how he plays, is where's the ball? Okay, I'm going to go get it. And so that effort, that hustle, really, really outstanding.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to go Big 12. I'm going to go Isaiah Thomas from Oklahoma. He was down at the Senior Bowl, redshirt senior, 6'5", 266 pounds. And second team all Big 12 each of the past 2 seasons. And on that front, where you have Nick Bonito, where you have Perry and Winfrey, we're going to be talking about Jalen Redmond next year. They've got some other guys up front that have made plays for them over the last couple of years as well. LaRon Stokes come to mind, right? So it's easy for his production and his impact to kind of get lost in the wash a little bit. But when you look at Isaiah Thomas, he's pretty well-rounded. He's got the ability to defend the run. He can line up inside and outside. He plays with an outstanding effort. And I love the position flexibility. He can defend the run. But to me, like the motor and the effort from the backside, the sense of urgency from him, he's an absolute hammer on contact as well. Whether he's as a pinner on stunts and games, or if he's just lining up to just try and run through you as a bull rusher. Isaiah Thomas, in terms of effort, really stood out to me on tape over the course of his career. Let's talk through some player comps here now, guys. Ben, I'll come to you first. Who's your favorite player comp from some of the guys we've talked about here in this class?
Oh, there's so many that are near and dear to my heart. I love the Jermaine Johnson to John Abraham. So I think maybe could the Jets or the Falcons be in the market for a John Abraham 2.0 coming back in their town? We'll see. Ebiketie to Shaq Barrett has been one that's been close to my heart as well. And one other one I'll throw out, Boye Mafe and Rashawn Gary, I think are very, very similar prospects: height, weight, speed, lower half, flexibility, playing very hard. I think Mafe, Rashawn Gary, very similar type of prospects.
All right. So a trio of guys, you're talking about in that day one, top 40 range there. Jermaine Johnson, Ebiketie, Boye Mafe. Dane, who's a player comp you like?
I actually like the Travon Walker to Rashawn Gary comps. You talk about the size, you talk about the way they tested. I think that makes a lot of sense. And then with Nick Bonito and a guy that I know, Ben, at least I know you liked him last year, Chris Rumpf, come out of Duke, where there's undersized guys where you're not sure where to play them. Are they sub-package only guys? You have to hide them a little bit versus the run. There's something, they're both those can get after the quarterback that we know they can do that, but it's what do you do with them on a full-time basis that you have those question marks. So Rumpf ended up going, I believe, early 4th round. I think Nick Bonito will be gone before then, but I think we're asking a lot of the same questions with both these players.
Hey, there's always a place for the pure pass rush specialist. And that's kind of what Chris Rumpf is. That's kind of what Nick Bonito is. We'll see if, there's a place for him in the NFL.
And honestly, I think you could put Dominique Robinson from Miami, Ohio into that same bucket. That's what you're hoping he can be, a converted wide receiver, made the move to defense, and they put him in as a pass rusher. 0 starts in his career, obviously has the high athletic traits, that ability to win off the edge, some really good flashes down at the Senior Bowl. And while Lorenzo Carter, when he came out of Georgia a couple of years ago, he had a little bit more experience on the defensive side of the football, I think he still kind of looked at him as kind of a moldable ball of clay. He ended up going middle of the 3rd round. He's now with the Atlanta Falcons, but played his full rookie contract with the Giants. And I think you look at Robinson as a similar type of player, and especially from a body type standpoint, they kind of match for me. So Dominique Robinson, the pass rusher from Miami, Ohio, to Lorenzo Carter. You didn't know if he was going to be a rush, if he was going to be a Sam, how exactly was he going to be able to use? You liked him more standing up. Robinson, I think, offers that same kind of flexibility. Last question here for the edge rushers. Someone who we're surprised isn't getting a little bit more love. Here we are, draft week. Who's the guy that we're surprised isn't getting a little bit more pomp and circumstance? Ben, we'll come to you first.
Well, Fran, you mentioned him a little bit earlier, and that's Amari Barno, who I think has just been climbing, getting better and better each year. Still kind of new to football, coming out of JUCO, only 2 years at Virginia Tech. Ran that 4.36 at the combine at 6'5", 246. He's really like the late day 3 version of like David Ajabo. Which he has all sorts of spins and flexible pass rush moves. And you see the burst to close and the length and the QB spy stuff. And, there's a lot of fun, really athletic, high side stuff done as a pass rusher. A little bit to be desired with his hand timing and things like that. Not quite as flexible and loose as a David Ajabo type. That's why Ajabo is a top 50 player and Amari Barno's in this category. But I think he's getting better and better. And he may just be that 5th or 4th defensive end to start his career, and that's okay. Let him go feast on 3rd and 6+ and see if he could use that athleticism.
Yeah, a guy that, to me, like when you watch the pure traits, just so intriguing. Dane, how about you?
Drake Jackson from USC. I was really high on him going back to his freshman year when he just kind of burst onto the scene. And that's when he was a 275-pound defensive end. Then they had him lose all that weight, get down to under 240 to play that linebacker position in Todd Orlando's hybrid defense. But it's interesting when you look at the combine, he's 254, his pro day, 273. That tells me scouts are telling him, hey, bulk back up. You still have that athleticism. You play with more power. I think Drake Jackson is there's a lot to like there. He's a loose player. There's some twitch to his athleticism. I think that we still have, he's still in the upward trajectory as a player. He's got length, the body you can work with. So big fan of Drake Jackson, and I'm not sure why he doesn't get more love.
Yeah, the traits are there. And you mentioned the flexibility, how often he was, flexed inside, flexed outside, his role constantly changing with that USC team. So the upside there to be able to help a number of different teams, number of different systems really makes him intriguing. For me, I'm going to stay on the West Coast and I'm going to go to the Mountain West Conference. This is a name, Ben, that you talked about so much over the last 2 years, especially when we in football season. I think that's where I get hung up. Is Cameron Thomas from San Diego State. This is a guy that got a lot of buzz as the season was progressing last year. You started to see his name kind of pop up in the later parts of mock drafts. And then he gets hurt and he couldn't participate in the Senior Bowl, couldn't participate in the combine. He goes to the pro day and he has a solid showing at his pro day. He didn't run a 40, but the shuttles were pretty good. And I think when you look at 6'4", 265 pounds, a guy that can line up inside and outside and win at the top of the rush, he's got good hand usage. He plays with outstanding effort. He can compete against the run. I just look at Cameron Thomas as a guy that really, really intriguing in terms of his skill set, just a very well-rounded player. So, we might be talking early day 3. We might be talking middle of day 2, early day 2. I think the wide range of outcomes there are interesting, but Cameron Thomas, don't forget about him from San Diego State. Now, we talked about how this is a very talented class. So there are 4 names that we did not mention so far. And I want to have you guys kind of break a couple of these guys down. Ben, I'm going to come to you for George Karlaftis at the very top. Dane, I'm going to come to you for David Ojabo, and I'll wrap it up with our 2 day 3 guys that I think are left. Majay Sanders from Cincinnati and D'Angelo Malone from Western Kentucky. So, Ben, we'll come to you first. George Karlaftis, seems like middle of the first round is kind of like the home that we're seeing right now in terms of most mock drafts and projections.
Yeah, it seems like it. Seems like, the Baltimore Ravens, Philadelphia Eagles, some teams middle of the first round should be that type of landing spot for Karlaftis. 6'4", 270, can play stand-up, can play inside from snug alignments, 3-tech, really strong run defender, good initial surge off the ball, plays very top-heavy with everything he gets done. A lot of hand usage, a lot of kind of upper body wrestling, not a lot of flexibility in the lower half, not a great first step, but he plays with those hands in front, very functional, very crafty, I guess you could say, plays through contact and off contact very well. He's a technically sound player, rarely behind the quarterback, as you had just mentioned, retraces, flattens, keeps himself alive in the play very often. I think he's going to look a lot like a Trey Hendrickson, the way he is produced for the New Orleans Saints and now the Super Bowl appearing Cincinnati Bengals. So I think you're going to get that type of player that's going to be a technically sound, 3-down, strong run defender that will probably fall into 9-10 sacks year after year.
As you mentioned, Baltimore at 14 seems like the ceiling, and down to Kansas City at 29-30 seems like the floor. So somewhere in that range, Arizona, you're a bunch of teams there with George Karlaftis.
I'd go even further. I know. I mean, there's several around the league think he goes to the second round. So I would say second round's his floor, because it's funny talking to people just over the weekend, going over players. I'd say there's more second round grades and first round grades on Karlaftis. And obviously that doesn't mean, because a lot of second round grades are going in the first round right this year. So that doesn't mean, and he plays the right position, but I wouldn't be surprised if he, I know he wasn't in Peter King's first round mock, I believe today. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's still there where you start Friday night, round 2.
All right, you think that's the case, Dane, for David Ojabo? Because it feels like we're starting to get a little bit more buzz now that Ojabo, despite the torn Achilles, is a pass rusher from Michigan. He suffered the torn Achilles a month and change ago. Now we're starting to hear a little bit more about him going back into round 1. What do you think there on Ojabo? And tell us what teams are getting for him as a player.
Yeah, and I think it comes all comes down to your appetite for risk and where you are with your franchise in terms of, can you take on a player that basically needs a redshirt year? David Ajabo, still new to football, been playing 5 years, had the Achilles injury. So you're not even, going into the 2023 season, you're still not 100% sure what you're going to get. Even if he is 100% healthy, what's the transition going to be like for Ajabo going to the NFL game? So we know he's an athlete. I think you should be encouraged that he doesn't know what he's doing, and he still had 11 sacks last year. 5 forced fumbles. Like, you don't just luck into that. A lot of that ability translates to the field. A lot of it looks natural to him. So with the job, I can certainly understand why, he's well liked, and a team could talk themselves into drafting him, especially, look at the team like the Chiefs, who have multiple picks in the first 4 rounds. You can take a risk on a guy like David Ajabo when you're playing the long game, and you have plenty of resources that can help you in the short term. So David Ajabo is really, really intriguing for a lot of different, layers. Just his ability, how little he's been playing football. Now the injury concerns, when is he going to be ready? There's so many layers here, which makes him a really tough guy to peg where he's exactly going to go in the draft.
And those playing the long game, interested in some of the metrics in the long game, George Karlaftis, almost a full year younger than David Ajabo. Really interesting to look at some of these international guys. Don't forget, George Karlaftis played on the Greek water polo team as a youngster. I believe he came over from Greece as a kid. So some of those ages of the international players, always interesting to look at.
No question. Both guys really interesting in their own right, both coming from the Big Ten. Now, I'm going to go with the same area of the country here, but guys from a little bit lower level of competition. Majay Sanders at Cincinnati, obviously they made the college football playoff this year, 6'5". And what's interesting, his weight has really fluctuated over the course of his career. He's been anywhere from like the mid 220s to the high 240s, low 250s, depending on, where he's been measured and when he's been measured. But when you look at him, his game is based off his athleticism and his first step. He can win off the ball. He can turn the corner. He's got impressive movement skills and that ability to win off the ball. So when he's wired into the snap count, he can really make some big plays, did so over the course of his career at Cincinnati. And then you go to D'Angelo Malone, who he has played 53 starts in his career, over almost 3,300 snaps in his career, 32 and a half sacks, 59 TFLs. This guy has played a ton, and he's been extremely productive over the course of his career. He runs mid 4.5s out in Indianapolis. He had a solid week down in the Senior Bowl. So I think when you look at Malone, he's got a little bit more position flexibility, guys, and then I think he can play. He's probably more of like a Sam backer, and then he can play in reverse a little bit more than Sanders, where Sanders, I think you always kind of want him moving forward. But both guys, they've got that ability to win with their speed, with their first step, and with their quickness. So Majay Sanders, D'Angelo Malone, again, Malone from Western Kentucky, a couple guys I wanted to make sure we snuck in there on the edge rush conversation. Now, let's now make the transition to our interior players. And to start, we're going to go with the best interior penetrator. Which defensive tackle presents the biggest threat inside with his first step? Now, there's only a couple guys, 2 or 3 guys we're talking about in round 1. So Ben and Dane, you guys are both going to have day 1 and 2 options on the table. So Ben, I'll go to you first. Day 1 and day 2, which defensive tackle has that quickest first step?
I actually didn't notice the day 1, day 2 option. I just rolled with day 1s, and I'm okay with that.
All right.
Because my guy may surprise you here, but I think he is in the conversation from 25 to 32 here on night 1. And that's Oklahoma's Perrion Winfrey, who I think is a very intriguing prospect, a very wound up interior defensive tackle that maybe didn't always get to let loose in his scheme at Oklahoma. And you saw it at the Senior Bowl, those one-on-ones, some of the best get-off. One of the most overwhelming bursts off the ball that really overpowered interior offensive lineman, guard, center, and even the occasional tackle as well, where he just stuck his hands out and ran those guys straight into the backfield, showed up in the game as well. I believe he was the game MVP. Just didn't always get to use that at Oklahoma. But when you watch him on a down-to-down basis, consistently flies off the ball, almost jumps off the ball. Sometimes at those nose tackle positions, chase the ball all over the field. I think his best football is ahead of him. Crazy length, crazy wingspan, crazy first step. That's a pretty good recipe right there. So we'll see if he squeezes into the back end of night 1.
Yeah, I mean, tough to say that he wasn't one of the 2 or 3 best players the entire week of practice down there in Mobile. Dane, how about you? Day 2, who do you like here for the interior penetrators?
Yeah, I wrote down two names thinking Ben was going to take one of them. And I wrote down Perrion Winfrey and Devontae Wyatt out of Georgia. So I'll go with Wyatt here. I don't think we necessarily got to see it a lot in that Georgia scheme with the way they used him. I mean, he played mostly over the B gap, but just he wasn't able to just attack gaps with that quickness. But when he was, I mean, you see the motor, you see the effort, the play speed that he plays with. And I love how he can win in different ways, whether it's using that range that he has, the speed, that initial quickness. So he can, when he's given the chance, gets those one-on-one opportunities, he can leverage those gaps, find the ball carrier, be disruptive. Devontae Wyatt, I think the best 3 technique in this draft.
To me, I'm going to go day 3. And this is a guy that has gotten a little bit of buzz over the course of the pre-draft process. And that's Matthew Butler from Tennessee. 6'4", 297 pounds. He's got pretty good length. He can get off the ball. And that's, to me, is the hallmark of his skill set right now. Quick first step, good lateral movement, suddenness and burst through contact. And he just, the snap timing is really good. So he can get off the ball fast, threaten edges inside as a 3 technique. Probably one of the more intriguing pure 3 techniques in this class. Matthew Butler from Tennessee. Went to the Shrine Bowl, so kind of flying a little bit under the radar at this point, but this is a guy I would keep an eye on here when you get to that part of the draft. Matthew Butler, Tennessee. Let's now talk through the craftiest inside rusher. Who is the most developed pass rush plan and advanced hand usage for those interior guys? Ben, we'll come to you first.
Yeah, a bit of an echo pick here as well. I'm going to go with Devontae Wyatt, who Dane just talked about. And for a lot of those reasons, scheme-based, you didn't get to see it all the time. Watch his one-on-ones down at the Senior Bowl, where you really get to watch them in a one-on-one vacuum, just rushing the passer. Let's just assume it's a one-on-one on 3rd and 7 and just go. And that was finally, you were able to see Devontae Wyatt fly off the ball, use his hands, come up with his pass rush plan, show some bend and lean at the top of the rush. You know, he really did that in the Michigan and the Alabama game as well down the stretch of the season. So it wasn't entirely, not on the Georgia tape there, but I feel like it's just been building and building. And I think he's going to be a 3-tech stud at the next level, a guy that's reminded me a ton of Jarrell Casey, who I thought was just one of the most dominant and underrated up and down defensive linemen in the NFL for a good 8, 9, 10 years out there. So Devontae Wyatt, one of the craftier inside rushers in this class.
Jarrell Casey would be an outstanding outcome for Devontae Wyatt. No question about it. Dane, how about you?
Yeah, you know what? Honestly, after Wyatt, it's hard when you look at the top 100 picks, finding a defensive tackle that you would, attach that crafty label to. So I'm going to give you a guy that I think has at least that ability to get there, and that's DeMarvin Leal. I think that he has body control for a big man. He likes to introduce his hands. He likes to use his length. And he's physical to point of attack. It's just he needs to be a little more savvy with how he uses them. But I think with coaching, he can get there. So I think that right now is not, example A in terms of being the craftiest interior rusher. But I think there's at least a path where DeMarvin Leal can get there.
I like it. I don't think that's a bad pick at all, because he does win in a lot of different ways. And that's why I went with Zachary Carter from Florida for my pick here on day 3. 6'4", 280 pounds. And it's kind of like the Josh Paschal conversation. Is he an end or is he a tackle? I like him a little bit more inside, and he looks like he's embracing that move a little bit more, being in the 280s as opposed to Paschal. But I think when you look at Carter, he wins with a bunch of different kinds of different slaps and swipes, a powerful long arm move. And he's got a really nice ghost move as well, where he'll pretend he's going long arm and then dip under. But the big thing is he has all those different moves, but he uses them all inside and outside. So showing that ability to win from multiple alignments, that kind of gave him the nod for me here in terms of, that crafty label, that ability to win with technique at the top of the rush. Let's now talk through power players. Who was the biggest threat to push the pocket inside? Such a valuable trait. Ben, we'll come to you first.
Well, this is the first one I pegged in the entire group.
Right.
And I think this is Travis Jones out of UConn. 6'4", 325, ran 4.92 at that size, which we'd be talking about more if there weren't so many freak shows across this defensive class here. But Travis Jones, the forward lean and his get off, start everything in his power rushes, immediately put interior offensive linemen in retreat mode on their heels. You saw it at the Senior Bowl. He can beat you with his hands or brute strength, and he can just beat you with being a bully, late in it down, and just literally wrestle you or ragdoll you off. All those interior linemen getting love that week, Cole Strange and Zion Johnson. he's got dominant reps against those guys where he ragdolled them, where it looked like it was a power fiver against a JUCO kid. So Travis Jones, maybe not a whole lot of twitch, maybe not a whole lot of flexibility or bend or lean to fly upfield. He has no problem walking back guards and center right into the lap of the quarterback.
A guy that if you just watch like the Senior Bowl and like, I think they played Vanderbilt. It was like halfway through the year. He was outstanding against Vanderbilt. You said like this guy's a top 30 pick all day. A really intriguing player because of that skill set.
I wrote down Jordan Phillips. If you remember Jordan Phillips at Oklahoma, he got a lot of jobs, I think, with the Bills and the Dolphins. I think he's still flirting around somewhere.
He's back in Miami. He's a guy that keeps getting opportunities, not just because he's turned into a solid football player, but he's got those traits as well. And certainly that power, a big part of that. Dane, how about you on day 2?
I'm going to go Fedarian Mathis here. I think people forget he had 9 sacks last year. I mean, second on Alabama's team, only behind the great Will Anderson. So, this guy can get to the backfield, and it's not with quickness. It's not with he's not an explosive player by any means, but he's got these bear claws for hands, and he generates power at contact. And I think something that's very underrated with him that doesn't get talked about enough is once he gets to the backfield, he doesn't miss tackles. I mean, missed tackles are rare for him on film. Once he's able to, get his sights on the ball carrier, he usually gets him on the ground. So, he's a guy that can squeeze through those gaps with that power, force his way where he wants to go. Mathis did not test well, and that's not a big surprise because that's not how he wins. But with his length, with his power, that's what you get with Fedarian Mathis.
I love it. I'm going to go for day 3, a non-combine invite, and that's Matt Henningsen from Wisconsin, 6'3", just under 300 pounds. This guy tested through off the charts, but to me, it was like the explosive numbers that really stand out in this category: 37.5-inch vert, 119-inch broad, and those tests measure explosiveness. And explosiveness equates to power if you've got the mass behind it. And so when I look at Henningsen, this is a guy, even like studying him before the Shrine Bowl on film, consistent power, that ability to push linemen backwards into the lap of the quarterback. It didn't always result in production, but what's one of those sayings? Disruption is production, and that's what Henningsen brings to the table as a pure nose shade inside in a one gap system. Let him play in traffic, handle some double teams, but push the pocket backwards. That is Matt Henningsen to a T. Wasn't invited to the combine. Probably one of my bigger shocks from that announcement. But I think when you look at his game, his ability to push the pocket really stands out over the course of his career in Madison, Wisconsin. Let's now go to run game. Best pure run defender on the inside in this class. Who stops the run the best from day one? On day one, Ben, what do you think?
Well, I guess we'll find a spot to talk about Big Jordan Davis at some point here out of Georgia. Obviously a great technically sound run defender, a guy that can disrupt, get into backfields, play with exceptional range, plays exceptionally athletic and light-footed for 6'5", 350 or whatever this behemoth height, weight, speed is. I think he's much more of a one-gap disrupting playmaker than a line of scrimmage dwelling two-gapper. I actually don't love his pad level and the way he takes on double teams. I just think he's such a freak show athlete throughout his life. He could just kind of survive with figuring it out. So I want him in a single gap scheme, getting up the field, disrupting into backfields. And at Georgia, he did that pretty well.
I mean, one of the most impressive, physically imposing players that we've seen in a long, long time. And just a fun player to watch, a great kid. Obviously, all the accolades that go with it. Just a really, really fun player. Dane, how about you? Best pure run defender, we'll say day 2.
Let's go with John Ridgeway out of Arkansas, who's transferred from the FCS level to Arkansas this past year. Did not look out of place in the SEC. One of my favorite, second day, early day 3 defensive lineman in this draft. High school wrestler, and it shows with his ability at the point of attack, where he's going to overwhelm blockers and he's going to find the football. He could shed and then pursue, and he has a little bit of burst to him to close and get that tackle. So it doesn't matter. I mean, if you want him to stand up against a double team, he could do that. You want him to quickly stack, shed, find the ball carrier, he'll do that as well. So there's a lot you could do with John Ridgeway, even though he's a little bit limited as a pass rusher, but as a run defender, there's a lot to like there.
I'm going to go with Neil Farrell Jr. from LSU. And I would say just like based off tape, one of the more pleasant surprises from just because I knew nothing about him before watching him. But when he took the invite to the Senior Bowl, I watched 3 games and I just really liked the player on film. And he's got always eyes on the football. He never loses track of the ball. He's really stout on contact. He's got some slow burn power. I don't think that's necessarily his game, but he's really stout and he's got that ability to be a really good run defender. Now, he's going to get beaten up leading up to the draft because he didn't test very well. He's got a history of lower body stuff. Dane, you pointed that out in the Beast, a couple of the surgeries he's had in his like foot and ankle. But I think overall, when you look at Farrell and his skill set on film, this is a good football player, and he's going to be a really useful player on the interior as long as he can stay healthy. Let's now talk through some versatility, because that is such an important hallmark, especially for this position moving forward in the NFL, all the different multiple fronts. So let's talk through who offers the most position and scheme versatility at this point. Those are 2 different things. Ben, we'll come to you first.
I'm going to go with a guy I don't believe we've mentioned yet, but comfortably in many, many top 50s, and that's Logan Hall out of Houston.
Yep. Who
at that interesting profile at, nearly 280 pounds with some good arm length, can play the 3-tech spot and get up the field and really overwhelm some tackles. But I like him as a heavy end on first down, can play some snug alignments. He's played some stand up, he's played some nose tackle and sub packages. I think he's really a guy that can play up and down the line of scrimmage, can play the line of scrimmage game in 2 gap and play the peekaboo, or just let him loose and go. He has a wicked club swim move or a slap swim move where you can get up the field, very reminiscent of a Reek Armstead or a DeForest Buckner, where he's that tall and kind of plays over top of that interior offensive lineman. Brings his pad level up just a little bit when he does that. But those long-bodied 3-techs are just menaces in the NFL. So Logan Hall, I think, is going to be a really interesting pass rush chess piece for somebody. But a guy in early downs, they can like project and visualize him in like 3, 4, maybe 5 different spots. So he's a guy I think is really a ball of clay for the defensive coordinator.
I'm glad you brought him up, and he fits this category perfectly. All the different ways you can imagine him being used. He was used that way at Houston. A really fun player to study. Dane, how about you? Who do you like here for this category?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the 6th straight question that Ben's taken who I wanted to talk about. So, yeah, I mean, I guess we could go with DeMarvin Leal here, who, and I think the big question with him is he versatile or is he a tweener? And obviously there's a big difference between those 2 things. And with Leal, I go back and forth because you can throw on the tape and see him win from the outside. You can see him win on the inside. He has the ability. It's just, he has to be more consistent for him to, I think, truly be labeled as a scheme versatile guy. But I think the ability is there that he can get there.
For me, I'm going to go Pac-12. I'm going to go Thomas Booker from Stanford, who's gotten a little, it feels like there's a lot of buzz about Booker. He's taken a bunch of the pre-draft visits, right? So there's clearly some interest there around the NFL. 6'3", 300 pounds. Wasn't like overly productive over the course of his career, but also was just asked to do a lot of different things. It was a 2-gap system. Wasn't always asked to get upfield. But I think when you look at his body type at 6'3", 301, he's got pretty good length. He's got meat hooks for hands. He's played a ton of football, and he'll line up anywhere from like 4-eye, 5 technique, head up over the tackle. He'll also line up as a 0, and he's got some 3 technique in him as well. So I think when you look at his potential, fit moving forward in the NFL, I could see him as a nose tackle. I could see him working. He's got the length to be able to hold up as a 2-gap end. He can line up as a 3. He could be a shade in a 1-gap system. So I think when you look at Booker, that positional versatility, that scheme versatility, he's just a really good football player. He tested pretty well. I think better than people thought, considering what he's done over the course of his career. But Thomas Booker from Stanford, a guy I'll be certainly keeping an eye on here when we get to the day 3 portion of this draft. We're almost here to the end, guys. Favorite player comps. Ben, I'll come to you first. I know how much you love your comps. Who do you like here on the interior?
All right, I already mentioned the Devontae Wyatt, Jarrell Casey. That one's on the house. But the one I would love to talk to about fans, and Dane really set up his profile well a few segments ago in Fedarian Mathis, reminds me a ton of Michael Brockers. And Michael Brockers may not wow you either. This guy was a 14th overall pick.
Yep.
I got news for you. This guy has played 10 years in the NFL. May not ever wow you as a pass rush artist. In fact, I don't think he ever had more than 5 or 6 sacks in a season. It's one of the most respected interior defensive linemen in the NFL. And I love these conversations of reflecting back on his career, 14th overall pick, 10-year career. Was Michael Brockers a good NFL player and a pro? Some fans immediately look at the sack production and say, oh, no, he really didn't get his job done. He was overdrafted. It's these types of players that do the dirty work that everybody respects in NFL circles, but just don't get the love from fans on the outside circles in the media. So Fedarian Mathis, I think, is a heck of a football player. He's gonna be a heck of a pro. May not be that third down ace in the back pocket to get after the quarterback. This guy's gonna play for a long time, in my opinion.
I love that comp. I think it really, really fits for a number of different reasons. Dane, how about you?
I'm going with back to DeMarvin Leal for the third time. And Solomon Thomas, coming out of Stanford.
Nice.
There are a lot of the same questions about, okay, is he an inside player? Is he an outside player? Thomas tested a lot better than Leal did, but I think when you're just watching the tape, you can draw a lot of similarities between the two players. So Thomas, was going to go down as a bust because he's a top 3 pick. Leal, could go in the 3rd round, and they could have the same career. And we're looking at Leal as being a pretty solid pro because of where he was drafted. Obviously that's a big part of this. So I think when you're just looking at the film, I think they're interesting players with some similarities.
For me, and you guys know this from doing this for a long time. Sometimes you watch a player, and you're like, man, I just really like this player. I just love watching him on film. And he reminds you of another player that you just loved watching on film. And you're like, all right, who does this guy remind me of? And then it just clicks. For me, Haskell Garrett from Ohio State, which there are things with the profile that worry you, right? He's going to be a 24-year-old rookie. It was his 5th year on the field this past year, and that was his best season from a production standpoint. So you worry about that a little bit. But I think when you look at Haskell Garrett, his disruptive nature, the ability that he's really, really violent on contact. He's got that quick first step. He's really nimble. There are just the really good flashes there. And when I look at the body type, just a very compact body, he reminds me a lot of a player that I really liked a few years ago. I want to say it was the 2014 draft, maybe even 2015 draft, Christian Covington coming out of Rice. Now, Covington is last in the NFL. He's been a nice, solid backup, rotational piece up front for a number of different defenses. He's been one of those kind of hired guns on the interior now for a bunch of different defenses. But Christian Covington and Haskell Garrett measure up very, very similarly. And I think when you look at the skill sets, they match really well. So maybe that's what Garrett is that he ends up being kind of one of those rotational pieces up front. But he was a guy that really kind of stood out to me. And that was a comp that really stood out to me. So Haskell Garrett and Christian Covington, that's not going to be the sexiest one, but just one that stood out to me from that standpoint. Last category, guys. Someone we're surprised is not getting more love. Ben, you first.
This one's easy for me. I think it's Matthew Butler all day long. I think this kid's a heck of a football player. Reminds me a lot of Larry Ogunjobi, who I believe is leaving Cincinnati. I'm not sure where he landed, but guy that's stout at the point of attack and stack shed, play the peekaboo, but his short area quickness, his ability to get up the field, slide into gaps, and just be absolutely violent and heavy on contact. Oof, boy, did he crush Matt Corral a couple times. Beautiful sack against the left guard, Justin Schaefer of Georgia. I think Matthew Butler, crazy length and wingspan as well. I think he's going to be a really good pro. Maybe round 4, round 5, but a guy that just does not get a lot of conversation and buzz as far as on draft Twitter and the media circles.
Yeah, like I said earlier, there's a guy there's a lot of fans of Matthew Butler when you're talking to people around the NFL. Dane, how about you?
I think Eric Johnson from Missouri State, not being a combine guy, but he played so well NFLPA Collegiate Bowl, Senior Bowl, that I'm surprised he's not talked about a little bit more. And then Kalia Davis at a UCF. I think we know why. He had the ACL injury in October. So kind of been out of sight, out of mind a little bit. But and the flashes with him are fun. And so I'm a little surprised that you don't hear more about Davis as being that dart throw on somewhere on day 3 as a guy that when he's healthy, it could be part of a rotation and give you some juice on the interior.
Can I give you another? It's kind of like the Haskell Garrett one for me, but Curtis Brooks from Cincinnati, 6'2", under 290 pounds, so undersized. He's a little bit older. He'll be a 24-year-old rookie. Again, another guy, 6th-year senior. He had a huge year this year, 7.5 sacks, and his extra year on campus. So there are things about the profile you don't like, but He's a good football player, like a good athlete. He's strong and he's powerful. He can push the pocket. He plays with great play personality, really violent player from down to down. I think he uses his hands well. I'd like to see him a little bit better as a rusher from a hand standpoint, but I think he's really good against the run. He kind of reminds me of Deidrin Sanat, who was a third-round pick out of USF a few years ago, and he has stuck around as kind of a rotational backup. Brooks might be a little bit better than that, but just a fun, compact, kind of a ball of razor blades inside. Curtis Brooks, a really fun player. I'm surprised isn't getting a little bit more love. Again, another guy was not a combine invite. Now we've got a handful of guys that we didn't hit. We'll cover three. Ben, I'm going to give you first crack, and I think I know who you'll pick here. We've got three players. Otito Ogbonia from UCLA. Well, I'm assuming you're going to go with, but I'll give you Otito Ogbonia, Noah Ellis from Idaho, and Asezi Otomewo from Minnesota. So I'll let you take your pick. Who do you like here? And we'll let you roll.
I'll take Otito, although I do love Noah Ellis from Idaho. But set me up with a name here, UCLA.
Otito Ogbonia.
Okay, I've been struggling with that one lately.
All
right. So at 6'4", 325, a good comp, I think, is Naquan Jones, who came out of Michigan State last year, ended up getting a roster spot with the Tennessee Titans, playing some good football for him. Definitely an early down run plugging type, but massive, absolutely long arms, huge wingspan, a lot of core strength, prolific background with a discus shot put in high school. I think he actually did a little bit of that for UCLA's track team as well. Complete freak show. He's on the freak list, plays a great leverage, terrible pass rush plan, really nothing to do on third down, but plays very hard, will run to the football, plays with no gloves. He's kind of a raw, just brute strong guy. He's really, really infectious play style, just the way he plays with his effort. So not much on third down, big guy, round 6, round 7, early down run plugger.
All right, Dane, I'll come to you. Noah Ellis or Otomewo from Minnesota?
I'll go with Noah Ellis, but I did want to shout out Uwazurike from Iowa State too.
Sure.
I think he's a guy we need to mention. 6'6", 315.
Yep.
Had a banner year as a senior. Another guy, older player. Had his best production as a senior, and there's some concern there. But on day 3, I think he's a good player. Noah Ellis, I don't think people realize that he tore his hamstring running the 40 at the combine.
Yeah.
And that's why it was not a great time. He did not test the rest of the combine, did not test at the pro day. I was talking to him a couple of weeks ago about it. And, he was really bummed that he couldn't show what he could do because he has all this ability for a player that's legit 350 pounds. He's got quickness. He we saw it on tape at Idaho. We saw it during East-West Shrine practices. So, does he need time to develop the technique and some of the finer points of the position? There's no doubt. But when you have a guy that size that has destructive power, when, everything's firing, this guy, there's something there. So maybe a rotational nose his first few years while he continues to develop and kind of figures out, what he's going to be long-term.
I love it. And I'm glad you threw in Uwazurike in there as well. I studied him and I kind of liked him as well from Iowa State. Otomewo from Minnesota. He's like pure 5 technique body, 6'5", 34.5-inch arms, just over 280 pounds. He's got tiny hands, and he hasn't had any more. He's never had more than 3 sacks in a season. But I think when you look at the overall body of work, this is a guy that can help you both against the run and against the pass, probably more so in the former. But a guy that is worth mentioning just because of the position versatility. He was invited to the Senior Bowl, couldn't go because of injury, didn't participate in the pre-draft process because of the injury. So, that's going to be the big knock on him at this point. But Otomewo, I'm glad we were able to sneak him in here in terms of these breakdowns. Well, guys, that's it. All the position previews in the books here for the 2022 NFL Draft. Ben, I know you're flying out to Las Vegas today. Dane, you're flying out in a couple days. Everybody, make sure you go check out Dane's coverage of the NFL Draft over on the Athletic Football Show. They're going to be doing all kinds of feeds, live coverage there. Obviously, making sure you're on TV. You're tuned in to Ben and the NFL Network broadcast. Both of you guys, thanks so much. This has been awesome. Ben, we're going to touch base with you one more time before we hit the draft, but we are finally here, guys. Excited to get this one in the books.
Eagles fans, Merrill Reese here to tell you about the Eagles Autism Challenge, presented by Lincoln Financial Group. This annual Ride, Run, Walk event supports autism research and programming as we work hard every day to advance the conversation from awareness to action. This year's event will take place on Saturday, May 21st at Lincoln Financial Field. With your support, we can help transform the lives of individuals affected by autism. Register today at eaglesautismchallenge.org.
Now it's time to hear from you, the fans, in the draft mailbag.
Great stuff there from Ben and Dane. Now, I teased last week on the show, if you wanted to get a question in before draft weekend, this was your last chance. This is the last draft mailbag we are doing before the 2022 NFL Draft. So we got 3 more comments from our Apple Podcast page that I want to make sure we squeezed in here to answer the questions that you have supplied. First off, DO6 left a question saying, if you want to be a true draft fanatic, then this is the podcast, can start and complete your journey. Ben knows no limits. Dio, that is very, very true. How about these 2 drafts? I did put on Draft Database with strict trades. It took 3 trades to get enough second and third round picks. So we've got an Eagles only mock draft with a bunch of trades that end up with a bunch of day 2 picks. So day 1, the only pick, wide receiver Treylon Burks from Arkansas. We've talked through him. Big, physical, versatility, all the different things you're looking for from that pure offensive weapon, possession type threat. That could be Treylon Burks, but he's also got that ability to win down the field as well. He did it numerous times in the SEC. He's running away from everybody on the defense against Alabama, so he's got some of that game-breaking ability. Don't let the 4.55 and the 40-yard dash fool you. And even honestly, even if you do take that face value, the fact that he's doing that at 215 pounds, 220 pounds, that is a very, very impressive time for a guy that big. If he was a tight end, we'd be going bonkers about the 4.55. Now, let's get to day 2 in this draft from DO6 and a handful of selections here. Number 1, Perrion Winfrey, defensive tackle, Oklahoma. We talked about him in the last segment with Ben and Dane. He is one of my favorite interior players in this class, and he is so violent. He is so much fun to watch. Every time I watched Oklahoma this year, this guy flashed on film and on TV. Just so much fun to watch. One of the best players in the Senior Bowl as well. When you talk about his quick first step, his stoutness at the point of attack, the violence to which he plays with the high effort, just really, really fun. Quay Walker, a few picks later, at number 51 overall, linebacker from Georgia. Pure height, weight, speed, only a 1-year starter, but when you talk about his length, his ability to impact the game in a number of different ways. He can play against the run, both from depth and on the line of scrimmage. He can rush the passer, he can blitz, he can play in coverage, he can drop in zone, he can man up against the tight end. So all the different things you're asking for in the modern linebacker, that's what Quay Walker brings to the table. Next up, Tariq Woolen, the corner from UTSA. Pure height, weight, speed project from UTSA. Converted receiver, has only been playing on defense for 2 seasons, but it's hard to find a corner at 6'4" who runs in the 4.3s. Those guys do not grow on trees. Tariq Woolen, one of those players. Next, we're going to go Sam Williams, the pass rusher from Ole Miss in the 3rd round. When you look at his game, Dane mentioned him in the last segment in terms of his power. He also can win with speed and that first step quickness. That's really, in my opinion, what his game is based on, is his athleticism and his ability to win the matchup against the guy lined up across from him. That's what Sam Williams brings to the table. Next up, still on day 2, Brian Cook, safety from Cincinnati. Outstanding tackler, versatile player, only a 1-year starter. He transferred up from Howard, then ended up at Cincinnati, transferred closer to home. He's been there for the last 3 years. Only started this year because he had a couple of upperclassmen ahead of him when he first got there. But Cook is a good tackler. He's instinctive. He's tough. He's versatile. A lot to like there with that pick at safety. And how about another safety to boot? Nick Cross from Maryland, a 2-year starter for the Terps. He is a really interesting physical projection because of his height, weight, speed, but he'll come down and hit you. He's got some versatility to play in the middle of the field, as well as to match up at times against tight ends. So he's got enough there, both against the pass and against the run, to get you excited at the safety spot. Handful of day 3 picks here. I'll run through them fast. Jelani Woods, tight end, Virginia. Falls to early day 3 here. We'll see exactly when he goes in the draft, but hyper athletic tight end from Virginia, transferred from Oklahoma State, really found a lot of production this year with the Cavaliers. Alex Wright, the edge rusher from UAB. I talked about him in the last segment. Powerful guy. He's got a really, really high upside, a lot of fun to study on film. Zion McCollum from Sam Houston State, cornerback. Big, long, physical, explosive, tested extremely well. He's a great kid. He can play on punt in terms of He can play on special teams in terms of his skill set while also chipping in as a corner as well on the perimeter. Really, really high on what his floor can be moving forward in the NFL. Mike Rose, the linebacker from Iowa State, pure Sam linebacker. He can rush the passer a little bit. He can drop in coverage. He can set the edge. But he's a guy that you can play off ball or down on the line of scrimmage as a Sam linebacker. And then Percy Butler, the safety from Louisiana. I think when you look at Butler, he is a pure post player on defense, and then also is an outstanding special teams player. So DO6, you pulled in a bunch of athletes. You definitely have a type in terms of all the players you spotlighted. A bunch of, how many times did I say height, weight, speed? You look at Traylon Burks and Quay Walker and Tariq Woolen. You look at Nick Cross, Jelani Woods, Alex Wright, Zion McCollum, Percy Butler. All these guys tested well. They were big bodies. So you definitely have a type. You definitely have an identity that you are trying to get across. And I really like that and appreciate that about your mock draft. Also, one last question here from Dio. Seems like an unusually strong draft class with elite height, weight, speed, and explosiveness traits, especially at safety, corner, and linebacker. Are other positions similarly talented? So, Dio, it's funny because that was the identity I kind of pegged about your mock draft. I would say when you look around, there are a number of positions that you would get really excited about from a pure testing standpoint. There are a bunch of receivers that tested really well. The defensive linemen that we talked about today, they all tested really well as a group. You mentioned linebacker, the secondary group, the safety and corners that you mentioned, they all tested well. The wide receivers rather tested well. So I would say there was a number of players to get really, really excited about from that standpoint here in this class. Let's get to the next question here. Adam Mack 44 left a 5-star review saying, guys, love the show. Listen every single year. What do you think of TJ Edwards, and is linebacker really a need? Are Devin Lloyd, Nakobe Dean, Christian Harris, Chad Muma, or Troy Anderson a true upgrade? If so, what are we looking for in a linebacker? Thank you. Fly, Eagles, fly. So talking about linebacker TJ Edwards, really instinctive, tough player. And I thought he got better as the year went on. You saw him, the ability to navigate through traffic, defeat contact, play through blocks, find the football, both the run game and the pass game. And I think his pass game value has always been undersold. Going back to his days at Wisconsin, just a really instinctive guy who was always around the football. So to me, I think you're looking at Edwards and say, can the Eagles get a little bit better around him? They go and get Kaiser White in free agency. I think a lot of people are really, really high on him in terms of his skill set, a converted safety who is better than given credit for, playing downhill in traffic. Going back to West Virginia, this is a guy that always maximized his length and showed that ability to defeat blocks and find the football. So I think when you look at Kaiser White, look, he's only on a 1-year deal. TJ Edwards, he's only got a couple years left on his contract. Davion Taylor, he's now in year 3, which means he's got 1 more year left on his contract after the 2022 season, right? So you're always looking to add talent across the board. This linebacker class, there's a ton of talent. And so if one of those guys presents an immediate upgrade and is the best player available, then it wouldn't surprise me if one of them ended up in Philadelphia. But you need all of those stars to be able to align to make that pick. So Adam, appreciate the 5-star review. Thanks so much for the question. Wrap it up here. Our last draft mailbag question before the 2022 draft. Maximus D 163 saying, Fran, I found the show last year just after the draft, so I followed this full cycle and I love it. 2 questions, please. Number 1, and I love this question. Center ranks last in veteran compensation. 60% of the top 10 paid centers were available as free agents, and 60% of the top 10 paid centers were found later than round 3. How can we justify a first or second round pick on a center knowing that? So here's what I would say. I would say, and I'd be interested to see what the numbers are. I don't know. I don't look as much into the contract stuff as I probably should. But to me, when you look at the 60% of the top 10 paid players at a position, I would think the majority of them were available as free agents, right? Guys that hit the free agent market, had that ability to cash out, and did. Now, I think that teams do see every single year a quality veteran center hitting the free agent market, and those guys change teams. And you saw like Corey Linsley last year, Ryan Jensen this year. He was set to hit the free agent market, right? So and he did for a few days, and then before re-signing with Tampa Bay, he left for Baltimore to go and join the Bucs originally, right? So every year, I think you see some veteran centers on the market, and that's because some teams feel, we can go back into the draft and we can go find our next Ryan Jensen, our next Corey Linsley. Both of those guys were day 3 picks or undrafted free agents, I believe. Jason Kelsey, a 6th round pick, right? Now, that said, you don't always want to play in that boat, because center is a really important position. So if you have a good feeling that this guy is going to come in and be this long-time starter, if people knew who Jason Kelsey was going to be, if you sent everybody in a time machine and sent everybody back to the 2011 draft, Jason Kelsey's not last in the 6th round. Jason Kelsey's going in the 1st round of the draft, right? So I think it's all about, and you have these conversations with every other position. We talked about it with Quentin Nelson a few years ago. We talked about Kyle Pitts last year. There are going to be these conversations with Matt Ariza, the punter from San Diego State this year. You go on and on and on. The positions that people will say are not seen as very, very valuable. Well, if you know that this guy is going to be, if you have a feeling he's going to be a Hall of Fame player, if you think he's going to be a perennial Pro Bowl player, that's a valuable player, regardless of what position it is. So I think when you look at a Tyler Linderbaum at the time, and I'm assuming that's who you're kind of pointing to here, that would be the conversation. Is if you feel, hey, Tyler Linderbaum, he's a surefire, perennial Pro Bowl talent. He's going to come in and be one of the best centers in the league by the end of his rookie contract. Yeah, like that's what makes that such an intriguing selection, as opposed to kind of diving into we're not quite sure about this guy on day 2, really not sure about this guy when you get to day 3. And so you're just kind of weighing that against it. So we'll see where Linderbaum ends up going off the board here in this draft. Next question here. Philly has avoided drafting non-premier positions in round 1. This is a related question, like linebacker, safety, or tight end. Baltimore, meanwhile, has spent 4 first-round picks on all of those positions from 2013 to 2020. Considering his roots with those 2 franchises, which ideology do you think Joe Douglas subscribes to more strongly? So, good question. And to me, I love this stuff, is looking into the evaluators and the identity that they have shown as team builders so far. And so far, we have seen 2 full drafts from Joe Douglas here with the New York Jets. And I think when you look at the way that he has used those high priority picks, really only one player has gone to a non-priority position. Elijah Vera Tucker, they traded up for in the 1st round last year after they took Zach Wilson. So you've seen Zach Wilson, Elijah Vera Tucker, and Mekhi Becton in round 1. In round 2, you've seen a pair of receivers, a safety, and a pass rusher. Then you start to get into day 3, and that's where you start to see they drafted a punter back in 2020. They drafted a guard in Cam Clark in 2020. They drafted 2 linebackers last year, actually converted safeties. They transitioned to linebacker. They drafted a running back early on day 3 last year. So still a small sample size, but I think overall, it goes back to what we were talking about with Linderbaum. It comes down to, how do you view the entirety of the board? How do you view this individual player? Do you feel really good about his ability to become a star? Do you feel really good about his ability to become an impact starter, a backup? You go down the list and understand all the different range of outcomes for the player, and how does that rate against some of the other players that are on the board, and how do those different positions impact the game? So if you have guys that are equally graded, and one is a pass rusher and one is a run-stuffing nose tackle, or one is a left guard, right? Well, now you're starting to weigh, all right, well, what, am I getting more bang for my buck, not even just from an on-field standpoint, but from a money standpoint, from going with the more high-profile position? And that's what those discussions, to me, are so insightful and so much fun to have, because like minds can have very different takes on that entire subject. So really good stuff there. Really appreciate the question from Maximus. Really also as well from Adam Mack and Dio, and really all of you out there. Thanks so much for the continued support of this show throughout the course of the pre-draft process. It's been an outstanding ramp up. We've been gaining listeners every single month here on the podcast, really over the last 3-4 years since we decided to make this a year-round show. It has been built towards trying to build this show up and up and up, and you guys have been outstanding, throwing us your support, showing us the love, continuing to listen. Thanks so much to everybody. Let's have some fun this week. Like I said, we'll be back on Wednesday morning. We're going to do the mock draft extravaganza. Myself, Ben Fennell, Dane Brugler, and 32 guests. We're going to break it all down as we get closer and closer to the 2022 NFL Draft right here on the Journey to the Draft podcast presented by LifeBrand.